The air in Castle Rock, Maine was heavy that evening, the shadows in the Bruckner household stretching and twisting like silent witnesses. 11-year-old George Bruckner sat stiffly in the dimly lit living room, the creak of the old house a constant reminder of its ancient, unsettling occupant. Somewhere upstairs, his grandma lay bedridden, a presence more oppressive than comforting. The phone call came like a crack of thunder, shattering the uneasy quiet. Buddy, George's older brother, had broken his ankle playing baseball. Ruth, their mother, paced the kitchen, fraught with worry.
George, I need you to stay and watch Grandma.
George's stomach churned. Grandma. The name alone was enough to send an icy shiver down his spine. He remembered her too well. That night, years ago, when she'd reached for him with gnarled, trembling hands, her voice a cracked whisper. "Come here, Georgie." Her hug was no hug. It was a vice, a chilling embrace that left him screaming until his mother pried him free. Even now the memory left a sour taste in his mouth. But Ruth's tone brooked no argument, and so he nodded reluctantly. As the door closed behind his mother, the house grew still, unnaturally so. The silence pressed in like a living thing, suffocating, ominous. George sat staring at the ceiling, where the faint shuffle of Grandma's movements had gone eerily quiet. And then came the memories, dark, fragmented whispers clawing their way out of the shadows of his mind. He remembered hushed conversations between his mother and her siblings, voices strained with fear and revulsion. "You have to take her, Ruth," they'd said. "She has no one else." He remembered hearing about the strange books Grandma owned, books that led to her excommunication from the church and her dismissal as a teacher. More disturbing still were the stories whispered in low tones, how Grandma had been barren for years, a cruel twist of fate. Then, suddenly, inexplicably, she'd borne a child, as if by some terrible miracle. George shuddered as the fragments of truth clicked together like jagged shards of glass. Grandma wasn't normal, she wasn't natural. A sound jolted him from his reverie, a faint dry rustling from upstairs like parchment being crumpled in a silent room. The air grew colder as George ascended the stairs, each creak of the wood sounding like a scream in the oppressive silence. He peered into her room, heart hammering. Grandma lay still, too still, her skeletal form a grotesque parody of life. George approached cautiously, the stench of decay thick in the air. Was she dead? He tested her, the small ritual movements his mother had shown him. Nothing. Relief washed over him, cold and fleeting, as he fled the room to call the doctor, only to find the phone dead. The house seemed to laugh at him, mocking his growing desperation. And then it happened. A hand, cold and claw-like, seized his wrist as he returned to the room to cover her face. George froze, terror coursing through him, as Grandma's milky eyes opened. A guttural moan escaped her lips, rising into a grotesque parody of speech.
"Georgie,"
she crooned, her voice a blend of gravel and ice. He stumbled back, the shadows in the room growing thicker, darker. They seemed to move, to writhe, as if alive. Grandma's frail body jerked upright, her lips splitting into a grin that stretched too wide.
"Come to me. Let me hold you."
Panic gripped him, but his legs betrayed him, moving toward her against his will. It was as if the house itself conspired to deliver him to her arms. A whisper reached his ears, faint but insistent. Aunt Flo's voice, urgent and sharp, cutting through the haze.
"Invoke the name George Haster. Command her to stop."
With a cry, he screamed the name, the syllables slicing the air like a blade. Grandma's form convulsed, her face contorted with rage and pain. But it was too late. Her arms closed around him and the world went dark. When Ruth returned an hour later, she found George sitting quietly in the living room.
Is everything all right?
She asked, her voice trembling.
Grandma's gone. She just passed.
His tone calm, almost serene. His eyes, however, held a new depth, something dark and glinting. Ruth pressed him further, but George waved her off, retreating to his room. In the shadows of the house, something new had awakened. George sat by his bed, lips moving in silent incantation, his fingers tracing the symbols Gramma had shown him in his mind's eye. Across town, Aunt Flo gasped her last breath, her death sudden and violent. George smiled. He had so much to learn, so much power to wield. And tomorrow he'd start with Buddy. After all, what fun is power without someone to torment? If you liked our video, please like, subscribe and share with your friends.